Welcome to the latest episode of the now famous Nacoa Lunchtime Lives. This is a series of live interviews that go out on normally our Instagram page, but one of our social media platforms where I speak to incredible people that have advocated for Nacoa and COAs in general. And in this powerful episode, we speak to the amazing Aaron Willis. Now, Aaron is now a Nacoa ambassador, and we announced that to the world on this live. And we also talked about Aaron Willis's life. Now, Aaron is an incredible human being. He's a businessman, and you may remember him as a candidate on The Apprentice. We chat about his life, what it was like growing up with an alcoholic dad, and the impacts that had on him as a person and into his adult life. It's a really good conversation. If you don't know anything about Aaron, he's a great man, he's a great guy, and we're amazingly happy to have him on board at Nacoa, and I know he's going to do some amazing work, and the passion for that really comes across in this interview. So sit tight, get comfortable, and enjoy this chat with Aaron Willis. And by the way, very quickly, if you haven't yet subscribed to the channel and like the video, it really helps, and make sure that you follow us across all of our social media platforms too.
All right, mate, I'm going to try and get somewhere. Can you hear me?
I can hear
you,
yeah.
Not as bad live. Hold on, let's see. There we go. That's better.
There you go.
How you doing?
Just got my mouth. That's no good. That's better.
There we go. How you doing, mate? You all right?
I'm all right. How are you?
Getting there, mate. I'm getting there. Love that beard. It's better than mine. Got beard envy.
Mate, I was 25 before I could grow it properly. So the moment that I could,
Yeah, get on it. Yeah, it's good. Get Muzz there. How you doing, Sam? You all right, mate?
Anyway, listen, I thought the best way to start off, really, the whole live, is to just introduce you and announce to everybody that you are now a Nacoa ambassador.
Yeah, that was. I knew I'd get myself in there eventually. It's something, like I said. I mentioned it a few months ago at the event, and I've touched it quite heavily on social media. That as a kid growing up, unfortunately my dad was an alcoholic. He had an amazing military career and just struggled with the transition between military and civilian, and I think that's when his demons started. He found it very difficult to get back into that mindset of being in the civilian world, and I think that's echoed quite a lot of veterans who still suffer from that. And as a kid, I'd be wrong in saying that we didn't have a good childhood with my dad, because he was amazing. He still, when people think children growing up with alcoholic parents, it isn't as destructive or abusive as people think. It just means that you have that absent parent when there's times where a parent's evening, or you want to go to a football game, and the pub's always taken the winning pole, so to speak. So I wish that at that time that there was a Nacoa for me, for someone to like just talk to, or just someone who you could actually share things with. So being an ambassador here is something that I'm really proud to be, like genuinely am, and I can't wait to see what the future holds with us, really, definitely.
Yeah. Talking just to explore a little bit, if we can, about what it was like with that. I think it's really interesting, by the way, that you talk about how it might have almost been unnoticeable, right? And because I think sometimes the stories that we hear for children that are affected by parents drinking in this way, we often hear the catastrophic, terrible stories, right? Do you feel like it was a little bit more subtle in the environment that you grew up with your dad?
I don't think it was as subtle. I think as a kid it probably was, because you knew no different. But as you growing up, that's when you feel that it wasn't destructive. Obviously there was arguments and things, and there was a lot of times where my dad would obviously come home like drunk or whatever, and stuff like that. And I think that's when you realise that actually this isn't the childhood that my friends have got, kind of thing. But yeah, it certainly wasn't as disruptive as you probably would think, definitely. Because one thing I always realised, that my dad was always there, like like in the mornings at school and stuff. I think it was more, so you didn't really see much of it because that's what you was used to. I think it was when you came home from school, it's like, oh, where's dad? Like, he isn't there at the time, and he didn't get into like midnight, and then you start thinking this is a bit of a shame because you want to spend more time with him. And I think as I got older, I think that's when it hit me, like when I was even 17, 18, 19, even going on, that my dad had such a severe problem with alcohol, and he missed out on like times with my children and things like that. He wasn't a grandfather, and he missed out on seeing his girls and things, because that's when he was really involved with alcohol, which effectively ended his life because of that. It was just that's the way it was. So it was a difficult time, but nothing as people would expect being a kid affected by alcohol, really.
Do you remember the first time? Do you remember the first time when you realised that maybe things were a little bit different to what your friends might have been? Is there like a moment, or can you pinpoint an age or anything like that?
Yeah, I think I always felt like when I used to go over to my friends' houses or friends' homes, one thing I always realized, like my dad always had a drink by his side on the chair, always, regardless. There was like a big bottle of cider or whatever, always there. And then I think days out, we was going to the pub. So if it was like my mum was at work, who worked goddamn hard, instead of going to like Alton Towers or the zoo or whatever, I was going to the Cross Keys. So it's one of those that you think, that's when I realised, hold on a minute, like, why am I always going to this pub? That's when I realised that this is not the normal childhood, really. I don't do the things that my other friends are doing with the dads, really. I'm always at the pub, and that was it, really.
Yeah. Was it like later in your life then, when you was like a young adult, when you started to, because obviously it was the same for me, right? But it wasn't until I was in my adulthood that I even sort of acknowledged, really, that those experiences were different. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, I felt I struggled through my teenage years a lot, yeah, with life, but I never connected it to the way that my dad was. Do you think there was, do you feel like that happened in your adulthood more than anything?
I think in the adulthood it happened where I was more aware. I think as a kid I kind of put in the back of my mind, oh, he just liked to drink, where he was just a drinker. Whereas as I got older, I realised actually he's got a problem here, like a really big problem. And that's when I realised actually my dad could be an alcoholic, because you didn't, oh God, of course he's not an alcoholic. Everyone, do you know what I mean? You have to be really bad to it. And then I'm thinking, well, he drinks in the morning, he's always drinking, he's always doing. And then I think he actually is. And that's when I was, early adulthood, I realised that he has got a problem, but he was way beyond help in that respect.
Yeah.
I think I think that was the saddest thing. I think it must have been about early 20. I remember saying to Dad, you've got a bit of a problem, like you need to rein it in. And the problem with my dad, he was surrounded by people who encouraged that kind of behaviour. So like there was one time he collapsed while he was at work. Liver was obviously starting to pack in. And I think the doctor said, listen, you really need to stop drinking now. Like your lifestyle needs to drastically change. And I remember speaking to him on the phone, and he was like, oh, this is like a wake-up call for me now. And I think finally we've turned the corner. And then I went to see him the week after, and he's with one of his girlfriends who was giving him beer and drinks and everything. I'm like, do you know what I mean? What are you doing, kind of thing? And he just surrounded himself by people that weren't beneficial to him at all, massively.
How did that affect you when you felt like there was a turning point, and then you see him drinking again? What impacts it have on you?
I think the relationship between a father and son, I think it stopped in a weird way. I think there was so much where I felt he loved the pub more, that I was more of a mate as opposed to as a dad kind of thing, or a son, so to speak. I think that was the relationship that we had then because of that.
Yeah. Did you ever, like, as a child, do you ever remember having father, like dad relationship with him? Were there moments in your childhood where you could do that?
Yeah, definitely. That's why that's why sometimes I think people always assume that it's always the case where there was a relationship there. Like, one thing you can't take away from him is like even on a Saturday morning, which is weird, but he'd always get up for me to play football, always. He'd take me to the football, always. So we had that kind of relationship, but there was other parts where after that, what I don't remember, after the Saturday game we've played football, then he'll go into town and you'll not see him for the rest of the day. And then on a Sunday, he'd be nursing his hangover. So we never, like with my kids and the missus, we go out on a Sunday or we do something. I mean, I don't remember him being around at all at the weekend, at all.
Yeah. What sort of impact do you think that's had on you as a person? If you look at like the impacts of who you are today, how do you think it's affected who you are today?
I think, in a way, I think it's brought me more aware of alcohol, really, because I love to drink, and I think that's the thing I do like, but I'm always conscious about how much I drink or to the excess. So I'm always on the back of my mind, like, oh, I think lockdown was one for me because I was drinking every day during lockdown, because I had nothing else to do, and I think that's when I started to think, actually, I don't want to end up like my dad did, and I think that was always in the back of my mind. But I think it's more with the kids. I try to do a bit more. Not, it might always be like the fun things going out. I try to teach them things that my dad never taught me about looking after yourself or respecting of people or making sure you are the best person you can be. Them kind of things, especially with the lads. I try to make them more aware of how to treat women, so to speak. Because I feel like my dad weren't the best husband to my mum. So I think that's what I want. I think that's why I'm always conscious of, like, if they speak to the mum in a bad way, I'm like, watch your mouth kind of thing, because I'm trying to make sure that I'm not my dad kind of thing. In a weird way, I'm always conscious of that, always.
In literally like nearly all of the stuff that you do?
Yeah, always. I think there's times where I'm probably more ambitious because I don't want to end up that way, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I probably work even harder to do something because I have to prove to myself that I'm not going to go down that road. Because I think it's important to keep that in your mind, that you don't want to, because obviously you look back at your dad and you think, well, he's got nothing to show for me, Josh. He's got nothing, like his life, there's nothing that we could. He was fun, he was amazing, he was a really good person to be around, but what has he got to show for me at the end? There's nothing really. So I want people to leave a bit of a legacy, or to make a bit of a difference, where he was beaten by these demons and he couldn't get out of it, really.
How many kids have you got, Aaron?
I've got 2 of my own and 2 stepkids.
Oh, okay.
So 2 girls, 2 boys. And they're amazing kids, like, absolutely. And I think I still have my dad's humour, which I think they're taking as well, because my dad's humour was unbelievable, so funny. But yeah, I think they're aware that, do you know what I mean, that I have a different mindset. And I'm probably, Vicky, my wife, says sometimes you're a bit too strict and I'm a bit too hard on them, but it's because I want them to not end up the way that not how I ended up, but I wanted them to be a bit more proud of the dad as opposed to me, really.
Yeah. Well, do you not get to feel any pride for your dad?
I feel pride, yeah. I feel pride in the fact that he served his country for 22 years. So I followed his legacy and I did 12 years in the military. I'm proud of that. I'm proud of the sober dad, because he was such a loving person, loved it, and even to the day, he loved his kids, and I think you knew that he wasn't a bad person, like no way in any stretch of imagination. He was a loving dad who really thought the world of his kids, but I think he might have been a bit weak in my eyes. I think maybe you could have done more, kind of thing, just to fight for your kids a bit more. Yeah. Really, I think that's the thing. We had such a distant relationship near the end. Like, I've probably not seen him for about 6 years before I saw him again. So it were a case of you could pick up a phone every day and speak to him about the football or whatever. You didn't have that kind of relationship at all, because he was always in the pub. And I think when he died, the eye opener for me, Josh, was like all his Facebook posts with people in the pub, like, oh, we're going to miss him. He was such a good laugh in the pub. And you're like, oh, like, that was his life, his pub. And me and my sisters went obviously to clear it out to his house and stuff. And then we went to the pub for a drink where he drank, and it was like, because I needed that kind of closure, really. In a way, it sounds weird, but I think I needed to, because that was his home. That's where he lived all the time.
Yeah.
But then I got angry. I was angry because all the bar staff was like, "Oh, we loved him. He was such." And I thought, why did you let him drink this much? Kind of thing. Why did you? But you can't be mad at them, can you? Because that's their job. He's made that conscious decision to go to the pub every day. But I think that was the turning point. You think, God, the only people that miss him in this town is people in the pub. That's it.
I think that will resonate strongly with a lot. Most people that I speak to, it's like the people that they drank with just think that they're this amazing person, right? And so as their child, adult child, it's really hard, I think, to hear, because you want to be like, well, if you loved him so much, why were you in here? I really remember, I was like 9. I was 9 when my dad died, and I even really remember at 9 years old, there was one particular man who was a clear drinker, you know, like red-faced drinker. And I remember him being like, your dad was an amazing man. And I remember thinking, I don't want someone like you to think my dad's an amazing man. I don't want you to think he's an amazing man. You know what I mean? And so I really resonate with being driven by that legacy thing, because I'd imagine, and the answer might just be no to this, but let me just ask it. Do you speak to your kids about your dad?
Not really.
Yeah.
No. In fact, hardly ever. I think if we do, it'd be in jest about something that he did or whatever. But there was nothing really that we sit and talk to him about. I think the only time is we've gone to Jamaica recently, and my dad's background's Jamaican, his family is Jamaican. I think that's the only time we spoke about my dad's heritage, but nothing to do with him as a person. Ever. Never talk about it.
Because, you know, the one thing I get asked a lot in the work that I do, right? I get asked a similar question of, like, what drives you to do what you do today? And I know, like, when my kids ask me about, because they do, right? Every now and then they say, well, my kids say, did you have a dad? Because they don't know. And I have to say, yeah, and like age appropriate stuff to them. I got nothing to tell them. Do you know what I mean? I got nothing to tell them. And I really want, when I'm gone, my kids to have their kids, right? And I bet this is similar for you. When your kids have their kids and their kids ask them about you, they can show pictures and be like, and show video and be like, this was my dad, your granddad, and let's sit for a while and talk about all the amazing things that he done. Because I don't get to do that with my kids, and that's for me, that's one of the most saddest parts of it as an adult. There's nothing to talk about, you know.
No, and they don't ask about him as well. That's sad. Like Grace, she I think she's the only one who mentioned it, like sometimes, like, but no one's interested in what he did, which is so sad. Like no one ever asks. It's not even about his military career or anything. It's they just don't have. They've never had a relationship with him, so they don't, and they're not interested in finding out about it.
Yeah.
Maybe because I don't talk about it. Maybe I don't know.
Yeah, but it's like you say, whenever to talk about your dad is similar for me, right? To talk about my dad, it's not like a fun conversation, like I hope it will be when I'm gone, when people talk about me, and similar for you, right? When the day that you leave this world, there'll be lots of stories that people can talk about, and it's a nice reflection. I think it's almost like you only ever really have this idea of the fun-loving guy who was at the pub. That's all I know about my dad. Anybody that knows my dad says, yeah, he was a great man, like, you know what I mean, knew how to have fun. And I think, yeah, but he was my dad. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Was he always like it, Aaron? Is it ever since you can remember, even like when he was in the army and stuff like that, or did it progress?
Yeah, I think it got worse and worse and worse as he got older, and he got into even more of the pits of alcohol. But I can't remember. He never had a break, from what I remember, of trying to be sober. I don't even think he wanted to be fair. I don't think back then there was much help or awareness either, though, was there? So it was a kind of case of there was no one really. I think the military, in my eyes, let him down a bit, and I think that's why I always think, and I see it so many times still with the military. I think they could have had his back a bit more. I think there's not enough for the military to help people who have left at all, and you can understand why the likes of my dad did that, because I don't think there's enough people in the military who can help them progress. They'll say the right things, but they don't do the right thing, so to speak, and I see it now. I'm literally just got off the phone with a guy who's homeless tonight, who's served 15 years in the military. He's walking around London and he doesn't know where he's going to sleep tonight because he's left the army and they've left him. So, like, after I finish this call, I'm going to be ringing up every hotel I can find to put this person up in London, because he's walking around the streets now.
Yeah. Wow.
And it's just, and he's turning to alcohol, and that's the thing. He's going down that road, and you see, he drinks because that's all he's got to do.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah. Is that, I guess that's why do you do a lot of stuff around addiction, or is it Nacoa that you stumbled across? Do you do stuff in?
It was Nacoa. Yeah, I was touching on more on military veterans who were homeless due to addiction, but I didn't know much about Nacoa until I spoke to, like, Jess, my friend, who put on the event, and obviously with Callum as well. So I was speaking to Callum about it. And then after the event that we had at Hotel Football, I think that's when it resonated that what an amazing charity this is. It's like unbelievable. I think even just the network of people who are in I've never been in a place where everyone in the same room is in you're going through the same things.
Yeah.
I've never been through that before. Someone will always, it could be anything, but someone said, yeah, that's what happened to me. That's how I felt. And I just think, God, this charity is amazing, because these kids who are going through what we've gone through need us more than you can think. Yeah. And it's unbelievable.
What do you think what do you think society needs to do, whatever society is? What do you think we need to do better to support children that are affected by this?
I think education, I say this on anything, we need to educate. And I think society we ain't got an endless pot of money, and this is why we need people to donate as much as we can, because at the minute the government aren't doing what they should be doing for this charity or for kids, because it's not recognised as a major problem. So we can keep knocking down Parliament, and we can keep talking about that. We need some government funding for this. And I think the only thing at the minute, while that's not happening as a society, is spread awareness about this. That's the only thing we can do, Josh, at this moment in time, because the people that can really make a difference, they're not helping. And we'll just keep on banging the door until they do. And the likes of Callum and myself or whatever will keep on knocking down the doors, whether it's in London or wherever. But as a society now, we've got to educate. We've got to make people aware that these kids are really struggling and they need help. And the only way we can do that is the likes of myself and you and these lives, and just to let people know that there's a problem and there's people who need help.
And it is massive, you know. I know there's a lot of particularly young people, because I do quite a lot of the Nacoa stuff where we sort of go into schools and we do like a presentation and talk about Nacoa and let young kids know the fact that it exists. There's a lot of like kids that may never even fully engage with Nacoa, but go and look at all of these lives. They'll watch these lives, they'll see successful people like yourself, and it'll give them hope. Do you know what I mean? Do you ever think about did you ever interact with an adult as a kid properly about what was happening with your dad? I mean, like, did anybody talk about his issue with drinking? Did you ever talk with an adult about it? Never.
It was so taboo, though. And I think that's the thing back then. You don't want it, because you don't really see that there is a problem. So you dare go to someone and talk. How dare you go and talk about your personal life as well? And how dare you do that? Like, you just got to crack on, I think. And I think that's the thing. Obviously, I'm a CEO of a charity now who works in deprived areas in Greater Manchester, and a lot of issues that we have is that these kids are struggling with parents who are alcohol dependent. So the kids that we're trying to fund for and try to mentor, the mum and dad can't even get them up to take them to school. So they're missing school because the mum and dad are drunk or whatever, and they can't get them to school. So we're trying to heavily focus on, like a Nacoa or ourselves, where we have a team of mentors who go to these areas and talk and give them up in a safe space to talk about the mum or dad who are suffering from alcohol, and we can signpost them to the right people, and we can give mum and dad help that they may need. But these are charities that are pivotal. They really are. But I certainly just never spoke to anyone about it. I'm still quite private like that as well. Really.
Yeah. I mean, I only do this stuff because of finding Nacoa and just being like hell bent on thinking, why? Because I accidentally stumbled on Nacoa like, I don't know, 9 years ago or something like that. And like my first thought was, why the hell have I had to accidentally stumble across this? Like,
yeah.
Do you know what I mean? If I suffered with something that wasn't stigmatized, or my family had something going on that wasn't stigmatized, I might have received love and support when I was a kid, and yet I've had to like stumble across this. And so the thing that you say about what you're doing in the charity with the charity is something that at Nacoa we hammer home that doesn't get hammered home enough, and that is that a child's right to support or recovery or healing should not be dependent on their parents and whether their parent want to engage with that support, because there's so many kids whose parent won't engage with that support, and those kids may be living in households where they're not showing up massively on these safeguarding radars. Do you know what I mean? Because it's just, you know what I mean, there's nothing like that shows up, so they just go without support in today's world, and that's what has to change, I think.
Yeah, there isn't, and because they'll never come and ask for it sometimes, and some kids don't, and a lot of them haven't got the confidence, and the confidence is sapped already. So we need to obviously get these people, and we need to give them that kind of support, really. And it's not a fault of Nacoa or anything, or even my charity, but not many people are aware of it. So the more work we can do to spread that awareness is just, it's vital, absolutely vital.
Yeah. And I guess where you grew up in the north, I'm assuming.
Yeah, in Bolton.
So I guess like having a bit of a good drink and working hard, I might be being a bit stereotypical here, but the man, he was in the army, came out, worked hard. Of course he could have a drink. You would perhaps even be framed as being, betraying him at the very fact that you're even discussing it,
Yeah, I think we was very working class as well growing up, like really working class. So grew up in a council estate in Bolton. My dad did obviously whatever he did if he was in between jobs, but the whole thing was you have a drink at the end of the day of work. You go to the pub, and the pubs that I remember, even now, there's such a working man's pub, so to speak, where people was in overalls, and that was the culture. Like they're just men who drunk. And there is still a culture of people who do that still. And like I said, I love to have a drink, and I do it responsibly. I think the worst thing we can do is go on any live or anything, me personally, and pretend that you're not. I think that's the difference. I drink socially, but at the same time, my dad was really heavily involved in that kind of drink culture where, why is he not going to the pub? Like, why is he not? I mean, it was just one of those things. I think I mentioned, like, we went to the pub on days out. That was just normal. I'd have an orange cordial, and I'd get a few quid off my dad to go on the arcade games, and there'd be other kids there, and they would come home smelling his smoke and things like that. And then my mum would obviously go mental because of my mum always, I think that's the thing, my mum always wanted the best for her kids, and my mum knew that this isn't a life for her children at all. So my mum made the decision to end that relationship because she had to focus on what is better for her children, really. My mum and dad are so different in that respect, massively. And that's why my mum's very supportive of Nacoa, because I think a few people close to me like, oh, are you all right sharing this story or whatever? And I spoke to my mum first, and my mum's like, you've got to get this off your chest, or you've got to spread awareness. And as long as you do it respectfully, in terms of you're not claiming it, not once will I ever badmouth my dad, because I think it's wrong, because he wasn't. he was a really good person, but at the same time, he had issues with drink, and I missed out on various different things in my childhood because of that.
Yeah.
But that's the way it is, I suppose.
Yeah, and I think it's good to let people understand that, you know. I think the conversation around alcohol, I don't drink anymore, right? But only because I ended up finding that exact thing that you're talking about in the pub. I found myself too close to being like what my dad was like. But if we
Yeah,
don't have sensible conversations and understand that most people can have like a decent relationship with
yeah,
alcohol and it not be a problem, you just create more shame if you start saying alcohol is terrible, stay away from alcohol, right? We want open, sensible conversations around that thing. I think is the most important, particularly, you know, with it being Alcohol Awareness Week and stuff like that this week. So yeah, I think that stuff's really
yeah.
important. But
I think so. I think you've got to be realistic. I think at the same time, and we all want to live a healthy lifestyle, and I think there's loads of alternatives now to what we used to be doing and going out, getting leathered and all that kind of thing. But I'm comfortable knowing that I know my limits. I know that I will never, and that is because I'm conscious about my dad. I'll never drink to excess where I'll be in the pub or whatever. I'll probably have, I mean, if I can go, I can have a glass of wine at night or whatever. That's enough. Where I think a lot of people assume, oh, because he's part of Nacoa, he shouldn't be drinking. It's not the way. It doesn't work that way at all.
no, and I think it's good. I think it's good to be explicit about it because I think a lot of people might think like that, right? That we've got to sort of jump around certain conversations, and jumping around certain conversations is exactly one of the issues of being brought up in that environment, right? Is that everybody jumped around the conversation and never talked openly and explicitly about it. And I think that's something I always try and do now, is be explicit, because I think it was the hidden stuff, the stuff that we weren't allowed to talk about as kids,
Yeah.
that really caused the problem. So let's have it out in the open, and it might be hard and it might be uncomfortable, but let's have it there so we can deal with it and then grow as people as a result of that, rather than shame that comes with secrecy, right? Of hiding stuff and
Yeah.
like leaving it down and under the carpet, you know.
Yeah, 100%.
Mate, I think it's so good to have you on board. Is that your main thing that you do now then, the charity where you're in the schools and
Yeah, I've
stuff
still
like
got obviously my business that which is my security business, but I've always wanted to help things that help people or focus on the way that I grew up. And I think the alcohol side of it, Nacoa is, I think I always believe if you want to be part of a charity, you have to have some you have to resonate. It's not just to be a poster boy for certain things. You have to, in my opinion, I want to be able to be part of a charity that I've been affected by it, so I can then give my passion. So becoming CEO of Stride, which is literally helping empower children who grew up in deprived areas, who have got issues such as the parents haven't got the massive wealth, or they're in an area that the only alternative is going to a gang or expulsion or whatever, and they just need to be empowered, whether help them through sport, or we give them career advice or business advice or healthy relationship advice. That to me, I'm proud to be a CEO of, because I know we're changing so many lives. And it's another charity that I'm absolutely proud to be a part of and obviously run. Obviously, I'm an ambassador for Ripple Suicide Prevention, again, because people who have suffered to the point where it could be alcohol, it could be issues where we've grown up, Josh, and their alternative, that they've got so many demons that their only alternative is to end their life. So I've been affected by people like that. So I'm an ambassador for Ripple, and as long as I can keep going and working hard, then I'll just keep on banging the drum in things that I really feel needs to get spoken about.
Yeah.
And Nacoa is one of them, definitely. It's too much of a taboo subject still. It shouldn't be.
Yeah, you can see the passion that you've got for it, right? The passion to help and support people, I guess, to prevent some of the difficulties that you must have gone through as a result of it, right?
Yeah, I think we've all had them. We've all had them, and we didn't have, like I said it to when I spoke at the Nacoa event. We didn't have a Nacoa growing up, and I wish they did, because I'm telling you now that if I would have known about it, or someone come to me and spoke to me, probably just want to chat. That's enough. I don't want them to change the world. I don't want them to get me out of a loving home that I'm in. I just want someone just to talk to, because that's what I wanted to do. That's it.
Amazing. And we've got you back on Wednesday night, right? You're coming to the Nacoa social Wednesday
Damn
evening.
right, yeah. Yeah.
I thought you was giving me a look then. Somebody I can't remember. Is that in the diary?
Man, there's been loads of WhatsApps in there, and I was like, no, I know it's 7 o'clock, so I've got it on my diary because I was like, spoke to Pierce, like, don't get you doing 7 o'clock. Well, another live, but yeah, this one's a good one. This will be it's a night one, aren't they? The good night ones.
Yeah, exactly. And it's in a private space, so it's for the members, people that are a member of Nacoa. So if you're not a member, you can go into the link in the Nacoa bio on here and check that out and see. We're doing lots of different stuff for Alcohol Awareness Week as well, which is really good to raise awareness from. And I think that private space Wednesday evening over on the Zoom will be really nice because we might be, we'll probably dive into some of the stuff a little bit deeper as well and give people some real insights. So that's really good.
Yeah.
Aaron, before I let you go, is there any other? I've got a question I'm going to ask you in a minute, but is there anything else that you wanted to explore today that you were keen to get out while we're on here?
Where's my hoodie? I want a hoodie.
Have you not got one yet?
No, get me a hoodie. No, but apart from that, mate, I'm good.
You need a t-shirt as well.
Definitely. Yeah,
you need a t-shirt. Piers will be in here, and if not, we'll get on WhatsApp afterwards. We'll get Piers.
Yeah, mate. Yeah,
should have had it for today, really, to wear on here. He's considered it done. There he is.
Legend. There he is.
Good. Well, look, there'll be loads of people on it. Look, there's one big question I do like to ask, and if you could go, I ask everybody this on the live as a way of sort of closing out. If you could go back to the young boy that you were, say the 10-year-old boy, when things were quite bad, let's say that, what would you say? It might not be advice, but what would you say to that young Aaron?
There'd be two things. I think the first one would be, the obvious one is speak more about it. Maybe to your friends or whatever, just speak because there's an issue. But going back, I wish I was more, I probably would have listened, but more forceful of like, listen, stop. I don't want you to drink anymore. Because I think if we never had that conversation, me knowing my dad who would want to help his kids more, I think he would have took it more on board early. I think I wish I was more repetitive of telling him to stop drinking or I don't want to go to the pub. Because if I didn't want to go to the pub, then he's not going to leave me at home. He won't go, would he? Yeah. So that's the thing. So, yeah, I think I would have been a bit more forceful on my dad, really. I think I take a little bit of regret from that because I think I should have been a bit more forceful as a kid. And even growing up, I think I should have told him, like, you need to pack it in a bit.
It's hard, though. It's hard as a child. You've got all of the want and the need to be loved by him as well. So I think it's difficult.
Yeah, it's difficult. It is, mate. But yeah, that's what I'd do. But yeah,
top man.
Awesome.
All right, mate. Well, look, I've really enjoyed this, and I'm looking forward to what we're going to do in the coming years with you now on board as a Nacoa ambassador. When you get that hoodie, I'm going to take the plaudits for being the one that you pressed and pushed to get it.
Yeah, definitely, mate, definitely. But no, honestly, generally, I'm so proud to be part of it, and it's a family that, and I've got that kind of feeling on the event that was last month or the month before, even on this live now. It's a nice family environment, and I think it's a really good, safe place for people to be a part of. Definitely.
Most people find Nacoa, and then they find their tribe and their people. So once you're in, mate, we always say once someone's done a live, that's it. You're fully in. Then there's no getting away from it.
Yeah.
You'll be
awesome.
You'll be
awesome, mate.
Here for everything. So good to see you, mate. And
you too.
I'll see you on Wednesday evening. I appreciate your time. All right.
Legend. Cheers, mate. Speak to you soon. Bye.
Thanks, everybody. Cheers.